the ins and outs of the Port of Virginia. Tonight, we'll talk about the port's growth in Hampton Roads, its impact on the region's business community, and its future. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis. Business may be a bit sluggish, but things are certainly hopping at the Port of Virginia. A new deal to lease the state-of-the-art APM terminal and a labor contract, though, that may gum up the works. Those are some of the issues we're considering when we think about the present and the future of the Port of Virginia, and why the future of the port could be decided as far away as the Panama Canal. Our guest tonight, Jeff Keever, who's the Senior Deputy Executive Director of the Virginia Port Authority. Katie Carney is the Vice President and Director of Import Compliance at Hipage Company, Incorporated. And Drew Beckerdite is the Chairman of the Inland Transportation Committee for the Virginia Maritime Association. He's also Vice President of East Coast Operations of Total Transportation Services, Incorporated. Thanks to all of you for being with us tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, you know, you see those cranes at the port. It is a majestic sight, and so much of this region is dependent on what comes in and out of the port. Jeff Keever, what kind of year has it been for the port?
Last year was pretty dismal, just like most businesses, not only in our area but throughout the nation for international trade. But we've seen things begin to turn around as early as December of '09. And we've had a little bit of growth each month leading up to now. And actually, June was a very, very positive month, up significantly.
Wow.
And we hope that that's going to continue.
A couple of factors. I know that one of your colleagues presented a report that talked about the issues that would affect growth going forward. There are a couple of key ones we should talk about. One, of course, is a labor contract that's on the table at the moment.
Well, yes, Kathy, but this particular labor contract is very specific to break bulk cargo. It does not affect containerized cargo in any way, shape, or form. And we've asked the ILA for some concessions to help us attract new break bulk business that we haven't been able to go after in the past. And the reason we're interested in marketing this and getting a concession from the ILA is because this new transaction at APM, we're going to move many of our ocean carriers over to the new facility, which makes Portsmouth Marine Terminal available for this type of break bulk business.
And just find what we're talking about, because I think one of the struggles with the port is that there's all this terminology that is specific to the port, then a lot of us don't understand it, and we kind of think, what's going on over there? So you're talking about break bulk and container, so define the terms there.
Containerized cargo is the freight that is in those 20-foot containers or 40-foot containers that you see on the roads.
On the backs of the trucks,
absolutely,
right? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Break bulk cargo is general cargo that is unitized or palletized in some way, but not stuffed in a container.
Oh, okay.
So a break bulk ship could arrive at the port with pallets of plywood or bundles of rubber or any other type of cargo that just doesn't make sense to fit inside a container.
And that's the stuff you're hoping to attract to the Portsmouth terminal, which is now becoming available because you can shift some of the other business to the APM terminal.
Correct. Automobiles, ro-ro is another commodity we're interested. Roll on, roll off.
Thank you.
I'm trying to help with the terms here. It is unfortunate we get caught up in the specifics of our trade, but these are new opportunities that we hope to attract here to Virginia and can put a lot of people back to work.
So this APM terminal is so interesting because you talk about timing being everything. I think in any business, you start out with great expectations, you look at the market as best you can, and in the case of APM, they put a ton of money into a gorgeous facility on the Portsmouth waterfront, but the timing just was really unfortunate.
It was unfortunate for that development of APM, but the fact that they went forward with those plans when the economy was extremely robust and international trade was just bursting at the seams, it made sense at the time. And the timing of the opening of it was just unfortunate for them, but it's really played out well for the Port of Virginia as a whole. We end up with a long-term 20-year lease on this most automated facility in North America, if not the world, and the throughput capacity gives us an opportunity for growth going forward. and there's a phase 2 that we can develop down the road that would increase the capacity there at up to 2 million TEUs,
wow.
20-foot equivalent units of
so
those
much.
Containers.
Yeah. You know, as you think about that business going forward, it seems like those are some developments you might not have seen on the horizon necessarily. I mean, who would have known that the economy was going to do what it was going to do, and it was going to have the impact it did on APM? So the business model, or the business outlook, I guess, really has shifted for the port in some fortuitous ways, I suspect.
I would say that based on what you've said, we took an opportunity where the economy gave us lemons and we turned it into lemonades. And lemonade. And this new opportunity to try and attract this break bulk business to grow that. I think is sort of icing on the cake, because we have the automation at the APM facility. So it was a unique timing, and as they say, timing is everything.
Right, exactly. So, well, I tell you, one of the things that we talk about a lot is this business of the terminology, and so some of our guests tonight are going to help us walk through some of that. Glad to have Cathy Carney with us today. And Cathy, I hate to be so ignorant about this, but I'm just going to ask you the question because I can't discern it from your title. What is it exactly that you do? What does your company do? And what would you want people to know about that?
Well, the Hipage company, we are a customs broker, freight forwarders, and non-vessel operating common carriers. We represent the cargo interest and represent them through customs and other government agency requirements, both in outbound to other countries as well into the U.S.
And so what does that mean exactly? I mean, give me an example, or on-the-ground example of how that would work. Well, and you can take a drink of water if that's more comfortable for you. Because I do think one of the issues around the port that's very interesting, and it's one of the great challenges, I think, for understanding the port and its impact regionally, has to do with this idea that there's so much going on there. But as you pointed out, Jeff Keever, it goes on behind fences of necessity. And so we don't really get to see it as closely as we might otherwise. It's been a real challenge for you, hasn't it?
It certainly has,
yeah.
and I think the opportunities for the general public to sort of get close and become familiar with the details of our industry have been very, very challenging.
Yeah.
And the terms that we report in are in fact unique. And we talk about volumes that are sort of hard to get your arms around. I mean, in our heyday, we handled 2.1 million TEUs.
Right.
We need to somehow break that down to where it's something that people can better understand.
Sure.
You know, how many pairs of shoes will fit in a 40-foot container?
Yes.
I think the answer to that is 10,000 pairs of shoes fit in a container. How many, 40-inch flat-screen TVs will fit in a container? Unfortunately, I don't remember that off the top of my head.
Okay.
But
I'm still stuck on the number of shoes, which just sounds like an enormously good time. But I
thought you might appreciate that.
I did like that, actually. But those are the kind of figures that I think that people can kind of get their arms around. One of the other terms we talk about, Mr. Beckerdite, is drayage. What does that mean?
Drayage is typically referred to as the hauling of containers into and out of the port. It's certainly another industry term. But to break it down, is basically the drivers that come in and out, haul the containers, is referred to as drayage.
Is drayage. Okay, and so what has the business been like for you these days?
Again, as Jeff alluded to, I mean, 2009 certainly was challenging, but there has been a significant turnaround that we've seen, specifically in the last couple months, as volume has started to come back.
Right.
We see, more independent owner-operators. Another term, right? This is a truck driver that owns and operates his own piece of equipment under a company's operating authority. But we see the guys.
So you're seeing more of that?
The guys are having more of an ability to work. We're seeing more loads, which is a positive sign across all the companies that
So
are in
then
that
does that
business.
mean that, I'm just interested in that whole independent contractor approach to things, because so many people now I think are looking for work, and maybe times like these are the moments where they say, you know what, there's nothing else out there, might as well go see if I can strike out on my own and do it. So you could be an independent operator.
Yes, at this time you sure can.
Wow, interesting. Well, I wonder, Cathy Carney, as you think about this whole import-export business, what are the countries that you're dealing with?
We are dealing with countries all over the globe. China very heavily, Vietnam, Europe, we really have cargo interests throughout the globe.
And so if you, we'll use an example and say China. If something comes in from China, what does your company do about that? What would be your function in that?
Well, we start dealing with the people at the time that they issue their purchase orders overseas. We now are required to make security filings with customs before the goods are even put on board a vessel. So we start dealing with the client and their goods at the time they place their orders.
So if I'm company A and I've ordered a bunch of stuff from China, you're going to be intervening in that process before it even gets to the port in China where it's going to ship
Absolutely. We will start working with their suppliers overseas at the time that they decide to bring a container in and load it.
Wow. And so what kinds of things do you do in that process?
Well, we will do a security filing. We'll monitor the automated requirements with the manifest requirements with the carriers to make sure everything is in order for customs to do their job at targeting. Then we will monitor the vessel and its progression to the U.S. And prior to the vessel arrival, about 5 to 10 days out, we'll file a customs entry notifying customs and any other government agency that is required to have intervention with that type of cargo.
And that's a business that's really changed since September 11th, certainly, but even more recently, hasn't it?
It has been a business that is always changing.
Yeah.
It's one.
Good job
if you don't like change, you don't want to be a customs broker.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing because all the requirements seem to change quite frequently, and then if there's an event or an unfortunate development or something, then of course it seems to change again. It's really interesting.
Absolutely, and Customs has done a great job since 9/11 in implementing different layered strategies out there to keep us protected and safe here.
Katie, Carney, you and Jeff Keever were part of a panel discussion for the Inside Business Cox business series that we did a couple of weeks ago. And one of the attendees at that came up to me afterwards, and I enjoyed the privilege of moderating that. And he said, you know, the question I didn't want to ask out loud is this. I'm really concerned about security. No matter how good security is at the ports across the country, it's a tremendous amount of cargo. You can't possibly look at everything that comes through. There have been some developments in terms of technology around that. And I wonder what you would say in response to a concern about security at the Port of Virginia or at ports in general.
Well, security is something we take very, very seriously at the Port of Virginia and always have. We have a sworn police officer force that has been in place for a good number of years, and certainly pre 9/11, our focus was cargo theft, and we haven't had any of that, which is great.
Yeah.
Post 9/11, we're concerned about who's on the marine terminal, what's in the containers, what's coming on and off the vessel. It's much more stringent, and we have implemented significant improvements on the terminal for radiation detection, working closely with CBP. Customs, Border and Protection.
Thank you.
And it's one of those terms again.
There you
worse
go.
than the military.
That's right, yeah.
We also have been certified by Customs as an approved port. It's
really?
CT-PAT certified, which means we're sort of an approved port, if you will. Major shippers and ocean carriers likewise can get that certification, and the more you have that, it's sort of like being in the express line checkout.
Right.
But before any container leaves our marine terminals, they go through a radiation detection device, so that before it hits a city street or goes out on the rail, that it is monitored.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's certainly a concern that we have.
Sure.
It's nationwide. There are very stringent formulas that Customs looks at to ensure the safety of the cargo moving in into the United States, and they target certain ones. If every box had to be inspected, commerce would come to a halt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would come to a halt.
Well, it was interesting because this fellow who asked me about this after the program it was very nice, because he said, you know, I don't want to do anything that raises any concerns or suggests that everything isn't the way it needs to be. That was not his point. It was just the sheer volume of it. And I think you know, most people would look at that and say you have to do the best you can do, and that's at the end of the day what you can do. We talked at the top of the show about the impact of the Panama Canal on shipping. Give us a sense of what that means for the Port of Virginia.
Well, it opens the Port of Virginia to new opportunities. The traditional trade lanes from Asia to the West Coast, I think you're going to see a huge switch. You saw it when there were some congestion problems on the West Coast earlier. There's just going to be a proliferation, I think, of larger ships coming through the Panama Canal. The preponderance of the U.S. population is east of the Mississippi. It's less expensive to keep that freight on the ocean vessel, and so you bring it to the East Coast, and with the great rail connections that we have inland and the good trucking services that we have, we can penetrate so much of that U.S. market from the East Coast and specifically here in Virginia.
And so the cargo would typically come in through the West Coast, then it's got to be trucked all the way across the country to our population centers, rail and truck on the East Coast. So this would conceivably make. When is that project supposed to be finished, and when do you expect impacts out of it?
2015. 2015. But I think more importantly, on the short term here, Kathy, is in September, the rail project known as the Heartland Corridor is going to open up, and we should expect the first train early in September. That gives us greater access to the Midwest markets, and I think that's sort of really the beginning where we should see some significant diversion of freight from other ports on the East Coast to take advantage of this great rail connection.
And the Heartland Corridor, if you don't know, is just essentially double stacking those containers. So where you put one container through those windy roads, through the mountains, and through the mountains themselves, you kind of expanded the vertical height of those things that you could double that up and send double the cargo through, which will be a huge impact, no question about it, and certainly a huge impact in cutting the transit times as well.
It shaves off 233 miles and about a day's transit time out to Chicago. Puts us on even footing with the Port of New York, and that's why we think we'll see a big diversion of freight.
And so competitively speaking, if you look at the ports up and down the East Coast, where is the Port of Virginia related to these other ports?
Currently, the Port of Virginia is the third largest port on the East Coast. Number 2 is Savannah, and number 1 is the Port of New York, New Jersey. I think with some of the things that are getting ready to happen that I've already mentioned, I think in the short term we move up to number 2, and I think long term, if you really look at the advantages that the Port of Virginia has with the 50-foot channel, no bridge obstructions, great rail connections, and the ability to serve the Mid-Atlantic very effectively, I think we could become the dominant port on the East Coast of the United States, and that's really what we should strive for. And I think Virginians should be proud of the opportunity to see that type of development here, which means economic development and job creation.
Yeah, it's kind of curious that Savannah would be number 2, but I guess they're...
Well, they're getting the advantage of sort of that first port in after you come around through the Panama Canal, and of course the Southeast is such a huge growing consumer base.
Right, that makes sense. Okay. Drew Beckerdite, as you think about the trucking end of this process, certainly it's a growing piece of the industry. I wonder, as you look at the transportation issues that are pretty challenging in this region and for which there doesn't seem to be much good long-term solution given the state funding scenarios in which we find ourselves, what impact is that having on your business, and what are you contemplating to respond to that?
I mean, there's a lot of options that we have. You know, obviously the rail infrastructure is a great improvement in getting freight out of this area. You'll see where some motor carriers will actually embrace the rail moves of the containers because it's
so if they
still
can get it out of
positive.
town, then they can collect it someplace further on?
Correct, and it creates another opportunity somewhere else. Many of the companies that are here are doing business all over the country, not just here in the Port of Virginia. So it may just move an opportunity for the motor carrier, but there's also so many opportunities that come with that growth and the rail growth to the local businesses that are here. All the distribution centers that have been created here, it attracts more opportunities than it takes away.
Yeah. About a year or so ago, we were talking a lot about something that, and I can't remember the name of it, so Jeff Keever, jump in if I'm mixing this up, but it would essentially be a storage facility or transfer kind of facility that was discussions about it out in Suffolk.
Intermodal Park.
Intermodal Park, thank you. Oh, well done.
The idea of that was to have a large swath of land available that was properly zoned for industrial with the appropriate utilities in place, so that many of these distribution centers or import warehouses could be positioned in that same area. And of course, the two Class 1 railroads intersect out that way, and Route 58 and 460 are out that way, and it's a close enough distance to have short hauls from the port to that area where you could deconsolidate or strip the cargo out of the container, repackage it in
Right.
53-foot domestic vans, could go out by truck or by rail.
And so what's the future of that? Is that something that got caught in the economic downturn, or?
I think if you remember the Centerpoint development, they
Yes,
acquired,
yes,
I think,
yes.
900 acres out there. They're going forward with that, and that's sort of in that swath of land that we think sort of makes sense in that area. And there's the Shirley T. Holland Industrial Park on the northern end of that, and Target has their import warehouse on the southern end. So I think the localities out there are still very interested, but it may have taken a little backseat to the downturn.
Well, sure. The downturn kind of messed everybody about, didn't it? No question about that. So looking forward, this APM deal is very interesting, and there's also that opportunity on the table that the state was beginning to consider. Lots of vendors lining up to look at doing port operations. Now that APM has come on the scene, is there as much need for the revenue that might come out of that?
Well, I think I need to tread cautiously on my comments with respect to where the administration may stand on this, but certainly the APM transaction has caused a material change in the Port of Virginia, and the proposals that came forward a year and a half, 2 years ago addressed the Port of Virginia as it existed pre-APM transaction. So with this material change, I certainly think that has an impact, and I would imagine that the administration is going to treat that appropriately.
Yeah. You know, I'm wondering, Katie, Carney, we talked a lot about the impact of the economy in this hour, in this half hour. What has been the impact of the economy on your business and on the way that you do business, and what's your outlook as you think about that?
Well, the last 2 years, we saw a significant decrease in business. Our manufacturing clients were down a good 30–40%,
wow,
which had a huge impact to our bottom line. We, with technology and looking at new ways to do business, we were able to bring in some new security findings that Customs had implemented that helped carry us into this year, and when we see now a gradual increase in business. And I say gradual, but our longtime clients and manufacturing clients are looking at potential record-breaking year in 2012.
2012, wow, that's something. Well, my thanks to all of you for being with us. I hope your predictions come true, because some of the other economic forecasts we're seeing, at least in other businesses, have it a little bit further out than that. And boy, I tell you, it can't come fast enough. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Very, very interesting. And we'll do a whole show on acronyms, I promise. I'll be back in just a moment with a final thought. The Port of Virginia offers some of the best paying jobs in Hampton Roads, but having recently conducted job interviews for a position here at WHRO, I have some advice for job seekers, whether you're looking for a job at the port or just about anywhere else for that matter. Do your homework. We posted a position for a public affairs radio producer, someone who can think creatively, do research, book guests, write well. I was stunned at the number of applications that arrived without a cover letter or an email. Now, if the job includes writing, you should probably take advantage of every opportunity to demonstrate that you can actually write. Trust me, if you write well, you will zoom to the top of the stack because you'll be in stark contrast to many of the other resumes in the pile. And when you don't write a cover letter, it looks like you're applying for this one job and 500 others at the same time. Now, don't get me wrong, you should be applying for more than one job at a time, but I, as your prospective employer, should not see evidence of that. A number of applicants who did write cover letters told me how much the job would help them gain experience, get their next job, hone their skills. And a job should help you do all those things, and nobody will blame you for asking what's in it for me. And while I am very happy for you to achieve resume building benefits, I'm looking for someone who can produce a show. And your cover letter needs to demonstrate that you're the person who can help us achieve our goals better than anybody else in the pack. I was also surprised at the number of cover letters that didn't reference any of our radio programming, which left us with the idea that the applicant wasn't really interested in what we do. Adding insult to injury were the applicants who came to the interview unable to name any of our programs or to recognize that the host of one of them was doing the interviewing. I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. I know not everybody listens to public radio all the time, but if you're looking for a job at a public radio station, you should probably make it look like you were sitting in the parking lot listening to your car radio because you just can't get enough of it. There are parallels to this scenario across a variety of industries, and there's just the simplest solution that is within everybody's reach. It's called the Internet. Now, if you go to the WHRO webpage, I assure you, you will learn more than you ever wanted to know about this company. You'll see how we're governed. You'll learn that we have one television station and 2 public radio stations, that we're a national leader in education. You can listen to each and every one of the shows you might be asked to produce. So if you're looking for one of those great jobs at the port, spend a few minutes on their website, a few hours maybe. Do a search on the words Port of Virginia so you can speak knowledgeably about the port's capacities and its competitive position, and why you're the very one who can help the port meet its goals. Savannah, number 2, remember that. The level of information that's available to job seekers today is unprecedented, and there's really no excuse for showing up for an interview without having taken advantage of the gold mine that's at your fingertips. And in the end, we found a terrific producer, and we've had some fabulous runners-up. They made the grade because they were able to draw us a picture of how they will look with us, how we'll all be successful. And since it looks like it'll be several years before the economy improves significantly, I want to be sure you do everything you can to stand out in this competitive job market. For a look at this program again or any of our past ones, you can visit our website. That's whatmatters.tv, and that's where you can also drop us an email or sign up for our Facebook page and our weekly newsletter. We'll be glad to let you know what we're working on as soon as we know what we're working on in the week ahead. For more local talk about the issues, I hope you'll join us on the radio side of our house for Hearsay. That's weekdays at noon on 89.5 WHRV. We're not hiring that producer anymore. We will also, though, take your calls live. Thanks again for watching. I'm Cathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at What Matters.